Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. Obviously, Warzone 2 has seen several various updates go live here in recent times, dating back to, Season 1 Reloaded. We saw quite a few changes there. For what it's worth, most of these updates have been about gameplay fixes, changing a few things here and there for stability or, fixing different errors that are going on in games, stuff like that. But we have already seen several gameplay updates go live where they've changed around core dynamics with gameplay or core functions of gameplay. Specifically, those updates have happened the most post Season 1 Reloaded. Up until Season 1 Reloaded, from launch until then, a lot of the updates were, quality of life stuff, gameplay fixes, like I said. But something seems to have changed with Season 1 Reloaded. We've already pointed it out in the past. Shout out to my buddy Maverick. He pointed out that in some blogs from Call of Duty 4 days apart, they specifically said in the first one that Infinity Ward was leading up MW2 and Warzone 2. 4 days later, they mentioned that Raven was heading up Warzone 2 essentially. So it seems like Raven is now more in charge of Warzone 2 than before. Why that is, if I had to guess, it's likely due to player sentiment and how the game has basically been received up until this point. Obviously, it's a lot more controversial in ways than Warzone 1, with people saying, okay, I like this, but I really don't like the bots, or I like this, but I don't like how the loadouts work, or I like this, but I don't like the gulag. Clearly, the data that they have on the back end and also the feedback that they get from the player base minority, also known as the vocal majority, which is Reddit, Twitter, the YouTube comments, etc., etc. Clearly, everything they're seeing from that is pointing towards these changes being necessary. And that's why we've started to see in recent weeks, Raven start to experiment around with Warzone 2, which in general is very, very good news for future updates. And we'll get to the future aspect of this here in just a bit, but just in recent times alone, we've already seen some very drastic gameplay updates based on things that I don't think a lot of us expected them to change right away. Clearly, they wanted to change the loadout system with Warzone 2, right? They wanted to make this a lot more like a generic battle royale and have players rely on ground loot, chest loot, stuff like that, getting weapons off of enemy bodies and not getting your loadout guns constantly. So, when the game first launched, loadouts would not come into the game for free until mid-circle 3, basically. There were only a couple of strongholds, and based off a lot of the polls that I've seen people run, most players weren't even going after the strongholds to get their loadouts in general. A lot of people were just buying their custom guns from the buy station for $5 grand. So likely lining up with these public polls, I would assume that their internal data probably pointed towards players getting their custom guns the most out of the buy stations, but they weren't still getting their custom guns as much as they would like. So of course, what did they do? They went through and reduced the price of the buy station guns. They slashed that price in half and made it so that those custom guns out of the buy station were way more accessible. Alongside that, they also made sure that that free loadout drop event happened a whole circle earlier in the game, so you could potentially get your full-on class set up with your primary, your secondary, your perks, and equipment way earlier on into the game to promote, actively going after your stuff. I think a lot of this probably has to do with store bundle sales as much as it does, the player engagement in game with whether or not they were actually going after custom guns or utilizing those features, right? I think largely it is sales based, but also partially gameplay based, because at the end of the day, Activision is a money-making business, so I don't have doubts that plays into it, but they started experimenting with gameplay there. And then it seemed like there was positive feedback in regards to that, because they've also taken it steps further, made it so that now you could actually buy your full-on loadout drop out of a buy station. Obviously, the prices are kind of, iffy, if you will. 32 grand for a loadout drop is definitely steep, but regardless, the main point here is that these are changes that they were not aiming to do at first. They've gone back and sort of had to backtrack now and backpedal now and make these changes due to the feedback and the data that they have regarding the state of Warzone 2. So going forward, this means, again, like I said earlier, very good things for future updates and those that want to see this Warzone 2, experience evolve a little bit more. Real quick before we dive into that, just a reminder, if you are new to the channel, every single day I got you covered with everything you need to know about MW2, Warzone 2, and DMZ. So feel free to hit that subscribe button and turn on those post notifications. Also, if you guys enjoy this video, let me know by dropping a like on it as well. It would be seriously appreciated. But anyways, Obviously right now all the devs are sort of in their holiday break, if you will. We've seen a handful of like sort of mini updates go live, but nothing too crazy. We know the devs for the most part are out of office for Christmas and New Year's and all the holidays going on. But we know that once they're back in office after the new year, that they're going to be here for the long haul, right? There's no major holidays coming up that are going to cause breaks or anything like that. So they are going to be heads down, hardcore focused on updates and content changes, and especially with the direction of Warzone 2, experimenting. Now, we've seen it in years past where just before the major holiday break, they add in a new update and it leaves the game in a state of chaos. You know, they dropped the Cold War integration and then went on break 2 weeks later, and the game was a mess with all the broken guns, the DMR being wildly overpowered. Then they dropped the Vanguard integration, went on break, Krampus was running around, the game was hardly functioning at all. There were so many bugs and glitches and crashes and all sorts of just chaotic stuff. This year, that was not the case. They did do some smaller updates and obviously the Reloaded update before their break, but they didn't do anything drastic, anything game-changing, or anything that could potentially break the game. It seems like they're reserving those experiments for once they are back in full, and that's when we're going to start to see these major gameplay updates and major gameplay experiments take place to gauge feedback and see how the players feel. As they stated when they made this loadout change and introduced loadout drops into the buy station, it's not necessarily a permanent thing. They're going to add it into the game. They've added it into the game, I should say, and they're going to see how players are enjoying it. Are the players, playing for longer? Are they actually going out of the way to use these loadout drops? Is it resulting in more people jumping on the game? If so, they're going to stick around. If not, they might revert it back. But this also opens up the door for them to experiment now, where they could add in major updates that would have drastic effects on gameplay. And if they do end up, causing issues, they're going to be in office for the foreseeable future to fix those things and address those things and not have breaks, get in the way of anything like that. So I'm expecting major updates post, holiday break here, where they start to experiment with some of the more controversial things of Warzone 2. We could see LTMs where the health is increased similar to Iron Trials and see how feedback is based around that. If we need to do a TTK increase this year to make it more in line with Warzone 1. They could do updates for, the Gulag, maybe have an LTM where it is a one-on-one Gulag, or just flat out change the Gulag to a one-on-one and see how players respond to that. Updates with sniping where maybe they do have a one-shot headshot for a week or so and they see, are snipers too overpowered? Are they too broken? Or could we actually have a one-shot sniper meta in some way, shape, or form? Things like that are going to be played with probably in a public scenario so they can actually gauge feedback on what the community has to say about those changes and then go forward with that. And that is obviously something Raven did a lot of back towards the end of Warzone 1. There was a lot of feedback-based updates and feedback-based changes where they would run polls, where they test out things in game and make changes accordingly. And then a lot of that ended up being reverted with the launch of Warzone 2 and left a lot of people scratching their heads. Why are all these QOL updates missing? Why are all these cool dynamics that we had in Warzone 1 that we all thought were, really good gameplay changes? Where are they? Why were they taken out? Why were they reverted? It seems like now, based on these first few initial changes with loadouts and custom guns and that stuff, they are going back on some of their large and drastic changes for Warzone 2 gameplay to make it more in line with Warzone 1, but in some upgraded and refined ways, which I think is what a lot of people expected out of Warzone 2. They weren't expecting it to necessarily be this whole new game, which is oftentimes what it feels like with these new systems, and instead a fine-tuned and polished version of Warzone 1 with a new map, with better quality of life updates, with a smoother experience. So it'll be very interesting to see, especially here, as we approach season 2 in early February, and then beyond that, how we see gameplay evolve in Warzone 2. But personally, I am expecting big things based off of how they've already started to attack some of the more controversial and hot topics in the community, since it seems like Raven has sort of taken over Warzone 2 as the lead. But all that being said, that is going to wrap things up for today. If you guys enjoyed the video, let me know by dropping a like on it. And if you're new here, feel free to hit that subscribe button, turn on those post notifications. That way you can always guarantee you're up to date with all things going on in COD. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.